with the dark glasses? Okay. Okay. Then we will wait to approve the minutes. I'll go into the chair's report. On Tuesday, members of our staff and I attended an event at which Governor Cuomo presented a new vision for investment in the region's transit infrastructure. After some of the controversy over the control of the MTA, it was heartening to see the governor take responsibility for ensuring that riders receive the service that they deserve.
I want him to come out of here.
What was that? There's a mic on. I will move it even closer to my mouth. How's that?
Back now, I have a small correction.
Let me get through this, and then we'll go back to the minutes, okay?
Okay.
At the heart of the governor's presentation was his proposal for a restructuring of the maintenance, management, and ownership of Penn Station. But Mr. Cuomo went beyond just the facilities of Penn Station and called for an accelerated plan to modernize the subway system. As a part of developing this plan, the governor announced the Genius Transit Challenge, which has been widely reported in the press and features 3 $1 million grants to innovators who present ideas to run more trains, to increase the subway system's capacity, to put more and better cars on the system faster, and to develop a 21st century subway system fit for New York. Sounds like quite a goal, doesn't it? Implementing these ideas will be a heavy lift for the state, as the governor also has proposed placing the repair and redevelopment of the Penn Station complex under the control of either the Empire State Development Corporation or the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. The governor did pledge to actively seek out the resources needed for implementing this plan in the state legislature and with local governments in the region, and it appears that leaders of the state legislature who were there were in agreement that more money is something that the system desperately needs, and if you don't do it now, it's going to cost more later, so you might as well do it now. Getting on a different topic now, Manhattan-bound platforms of the N line at Fort Hamilton Parkway, New Utrecht Avenue, 18th Avenue, 20th Avenue, Kings Highway, Avenue U, and 86th Street reopened for service on Monday of this week. The stations were partially closed for renovation work that included platforms, stairways, lighting, canopies, and track infrastructure. The work will give the stations new ADA-compliant platforms, brighter lighting, new communication systems, new stairs, and new paint. Some platforms will get new canopies with architectural finishes, new windscreens, or new glass fiber reinforced concrete wall panels. And if anyone knows the Sea Beach line, you know how bad the walls were there. I mean, Greg Mocker went out and did report after that and stuck his finger in the wall and said, "What is this stuff?" So this is way beyond time. When the project is finished, each of these stations will feature new artwork, and the 8th Avenue and New Utrecht Avenue stations will be fully ADA accessible. Work will begin on the Coney Island-bound platforms of these stations and track infrastructure in July of this year, with a specific start date yet to be announced. Riders traveling toward Coney Island will face service changes similar to the Manhattan-bound service changes that just ended. This work is a long time coming, as some of you may recall that we took a field trip to that area in 2009, and it was awful then, and, you know, yeah, believe it or not, time flies. And just when one part of the N is returned to service, another part of the line will face weekend closures. This summer, New York City Transit is upgrading track and replacing switches on the N line in Astoria, and this work requires 8 weekend closures between May and September that began this past Saturday and will include suspension of service over the next 2 weekends. Shuttle buses provide alternative service between Ditmars Boulevard and Queensboro Plaza. Of course, if there's a weekend where the 7 line is out, they can't do this, so I guess all bets are off when that happens, unless they're totally done with 7 line, are they?
No.
Oh, okay, well, not only can they not do that, they always run the W on weekends when the 7 is not running. So Sharon. Mike?
The service was very good last weekend. I was very impressed. The bus,
The shuttle bus? Where did you ride from?
From Queens Plaza to Astoria.
Oh, okay. That's great to know. I hope you got a chance to look at the budget highlights document prepared by the U.S. Department of Transportation that we forwarded to you. In spite of talk about $1 trillion program of infrastructure investment, the current administration is proposing to dramatically reduce spending on capital grants, including sources that the MTA depends upon to fund its capital program, which flies in the face of what happened yesterday, doesn't it? This is particularly relevant in light of the many investment needs the MTA has and the uncertainty that surrounds the funding sources that will pay for them. This issue was brought into focus by yesterday's approval of the capital program amendment, which I will get into a little bit later in the board report. But there is great concern about the impact of those needs and what those needs would have on the MTA and how this will affect fares and service and debt service. In addition to the board meeting, there was an official kickoff ceremony held at 79th and Lexington yesterday morning, which was news to me because not only was I co-chair of one of the community board transportation committees that approved this, but nobody bothered to tell me. Of the M79 Select Service, I couldn't be at both yesterday's board meeting and the kickoff, so Trudy represented the Transit Riders Council at the event. After being delayed for about a month, the service began operation this past Sunday, and we all hope it has the same effect that the M86 has had on improving crosstown travel for riders on both sides of Central Park. Please mark your calendars for our PCAC meeting, which is Thursday, June 8th. We are scheduled to hear from representatives of Amtrak on their efforts to complete accelerated repair work in the station this summer. And I was just in with Ronnie, and I learned some things which I will tell you. The full plan for this work and adjustments in MTA and New Jersey Transit Service to facilitate it has not been fully released, but the Amtrak officials will tell us what has been decided when they visit us. One thing we know is that all of the MTA's operating agencies will be affected either by changes in their service or by changes in travel patterns by those whose trips are impacted by the construction. New Jersey Transit continues to be impacted. If you listen to the news every day, there are half-hour delays on trains to Penn Station. Between the Penn Station changes, the M-Line repairs that we'll hear about later in this meeting, and other capital work on the system, it will be quite a summer for MTA riders. Can we go back to the minutes? Yes. Trudy, changes or corrections?
Corrections, additions, I don't know why this. Okay, first of all, in talking about the Street Modernization Act, the reason that I asked for it wasn't stronger language, it was including the other, that was the key thing, the other piece of legislation, which was
1335.
Yes, and it's not Street Modernization Act, it's council. I'll go over it later, but it's wrongly named. And I requested a draft letter to see before this meeting today, so that for you and I to have a draft of the new letter. I still have not received it. So Bill, could we please?
Emailed one to you. I've got
Bill,
copies here.
you seem to have trouble with emailing things to me so could you email it to me again, and I'll take a written copy, and I would appreciate not having a discussion of it until I have a chance to review it, please, because this...
Any other changes?
Yes. Then the next thing that I'm involved with, and they are here today, to just say thank you from Valerie Mason without saying who Valerie is, and it was a thank you for our letter to New York City Transit about the 72nd Street SBS situation. And then to follow that up with, without indicating who she is, we have not received a response. A response from who? It doesn't say. We didn't need a response from Valerie Mason. The whole thing is that we still, and I want this noted for today's meeting and in today's minutes, that it is now 2 months since we wrote the letter. It is now 3 months since we had the bus meeting. It is now 3 months since we had the meeting with bus, where this was the lead-off item, and we have not heard back. And I will tell you about the bus people's not knowledge, or their alleged not knowledge, when I introduce our guests.
We have a real tight schedule.
Yeah,
so.
I understand, but at the same time, this is totally wrong, and it doesn't make any sense.
We'll go over it afterwards then. We won't
The
approve.
minute, no, I'm talking about the minutes right now.
So am I.
Okay.
If we can't approve it as it is, if the things have to be worked out, we can email it to folks and they can approve it that way.
Well, okay, but I am not, then we are not, I am not approving these minutes.
I understand.
Okay. Because they are inaccurate.
So we will table the approval of the minutes pending getting the,
Do I have to make a motion?
Are you making a motion, are you
You really don't have
tabling
to.
the minutes?
we're all in agreement, so.
No, I
you
didn't
really
say
don't
not
have to.
approve it, I said table it.
It is effectively tabled until
you.
we straighten this out, put in the correct language. So let me go to the board report, because this is a lot of stuff. So we got a report at Transit Committee about how successful the Second Avenue subway has been, how it is effectively taking riders off the Lex at many stations, how people's travel habits are changing thanks to this really fast new route. And the result of all that is one additional round trip is going to be scheduled on this starting in September, which is probably the quote you saw me. I didn't use the word lousy because that would have been bad. But I said all we get is one round trip after this buildup. So apparently, Judy McLean, who we all know, said, while we knew that there were 3 ends that are also sent up 2nd Avenue in rush hour, we did not know that a couple of R's are also sent up. So I asked Darrell when I saw Mr. Eyrick, President Eyrick, at the governor's event, so are these trains labeled correctly when they're sent up 2nd Avenue? Is a rider going to know if they see an R or an N that it's going to 2nd Avenue and 96th Street? He said, I would assume that when they get onto the 2nd Avenue line, the signage is switched and it says Q. I said, well, could you please let us know if that is the case? Because these additional trips may not be worth anything if people don't know where the train is going. And those are basically all R160 cars, so they can switch mid-route. But I have been told by somebody who has seen these trains, like an M train that was destined for 96th Street, at 59th Street, Brooklyn, and he told me that they're actually labeled Q there. So they are a Q from their start point. They're just running on the Sea Beach line, and then they resume after Atlantic Barclays. They become real Qs, basically.
No, actually, they skip decal.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, because they're Pacific Street. Of course they skip decal. Yes. Bill?
Andrew, I thought
And
that,
then Sharon.
is this on?
It is, but
Oh, okay. I recall that before the Second Avenue subway opened,
closer to your mouth if you can.
before the Second Avenue subway opened, we rehearsed all this, and I thought that was decided right from the start, that these trains that would have the destination, they would be marked for their destination and not where they were coming from, because it would be obvious to somebody out in wherever that this was not a.
Yes, I'm the person. Sorry.
And then
The
they would switch the designation when they
The
got
person
to the,
told me when they saw it at 59th Street, Brooklyn, that the announcement was that this is a Q train operating over the N line, to 96th Street, 2nd Avenue. So that relieves some of that concern. Sharon?
It's nice that the Second Avenue subway is so successful. It has been very costly on the N and W lines, where the service is very erratic and overcrowded since the loss of the Q. And we recorded a lot of this in our survey, but the W doesn't even run until 7:30 in the morning, whereas we used to have a couple of Qs through, and a whole bunch of Ws come through empty.
What station was this used
This
to?
is at 59th and Lex, which is a
Okay.
major interchange. And I hope something will be done to correct that.
So you're saying that there are far fewer trains due to the lack of the Q, that the
Yeah.
N and the W are not making up for the loss of the Q.
Sorry, and they're not on schedule. They're just erratic. They sort of come.
How many times did that survey happen already, that you did that?
We did it 3 times, and it's,
4 times.
oh, okay.
And every time it showed that erratic service?
Basically, what it does is there's a lot of trains that come in, and I don't remember, I think they're either N's or W's, but they're not in service.
Not in service.
Yeah, so what they do is they pull the trains into the station, they stop, they say not in service, the doors don't open, and people are lined up to go into.
Crowded
go into
up.
Queens. Yeah. So that, I would say
So
about
obviously it
a
wasn't a
handful of
fluke if
trains
it's
did that.
happened 4 times.
It happens 3 times between 6:45 and 7:30.
Okay, well, we're going to report that. That's good. Yes.
I have seen it as well, as I did the Barclays Center, and as Bradley and I saw it. I found out they don't call them Q trains. You know, they call them, on the radio, they call them Quincy November.
All right, so
And
Q
the only
running,
thing-
that means Q running on the end line. I get
Yeah,
it.
but the other thing was, is, and I agreed with Sharon, when, you know, those empty trains that
Or
she's
else it's a
talking.
new month.
You said that, I didn't, but the main thing is those non-service trains, they're coming out of Canal Street Relay Yard. And to me, if they're going all the way up to start Astoria, that doesn't make any sense for them to start. They should just start at Canal
shouldn't
Street,
be in
pick up the
non-revenue
customers, so people get into Queens a little faster. There's been complaints about it infecting into Brooklyn as well, because the R trains, up to a point, has gotten crowded. We do get W's do come in, but at the same time, if the ones that are starting at Canal Street, that's causing train traffic. And those trains should just start at Canal, go to Astoria, and let's get the customers where they have to go. We need to, a little faster
Maybe
service.
we should have Winton as a speaker and run some of
Agreed.
these issues by Winton.
And it doesn't make any sense now, we're seeing our trains now going to 96.
And
That doesn't make any sense.
it's just
Go
my
ahead.
speculation at that station that because the inbound trips coming from Astoria are so packed, that they're trying to get all those trains to the end of the
Well,
line.
we know the W is not scheduled as frequently as the Q was. We know that, yeah. All right, so I raised a little, I also asked if there could be some trains, you probably don't need it all the way to Coney Island, but certainly from 96th and 2nd to Atlantic Barclays and return. But they said that's when they gave the excuse of the extra R's and N's. So they said they would watch it because it is growing on 2nd Avenue. Soon there will be released a plan for Long Island Railroad riders as a result of the work that Amtrak is going to commence in early July in Penn Station. You already hear nightmarish scenarios on the New Jersey Transit, and New Jersey Transit is going to be routing a lot of its trains to Hoboken that now go to Penn. There have been calls for more ferries. There is just so much path service
Andrew,
that can be added. Yes,
How many people are they going to try to throw on the ferries?
it's not clear. There's people, including the mayor of Hoboken, that is calling for more ferry service. You can't begin to put on the ferries what you can put on trains, so, it's just so much. And some of the ferries would go to 38th Street, some of them would go to, the Battery Park City area, so it's unclear.
Yeah, they're most of them are about 150, 200 capacity. So
Yeah.
you basically got a subway car per ferry.
Yeah.
Then you have to have a bus to meet the ferry to take people to their final destination.
But if they're high-speed ferries, they can get across the river and back relatively quickly. That's one advantage, but it's going to be a summer of hell for a lot of folks. On the Long Island side, the service plan will be coming out soon. The Port Washington branch is not going to be much affected, but there will be additional service to Hunters Point Avenue, to Atlantic Barclays, and to Jamaica. Subways are going to have if it's at all possible, they're going to have to put additional trains on in Jamaica and 7 service. Unfortunately, the CBTC for the 7 line will not be turned on by the time this happens. Now, to make things even more confusing, I was in with Ronnie earlier, and I said, has Amtrak made it clear? Because Pat Nowakowski, the president of the LIRR, told me yesterday that he thought only rush hour Empire service trains would be going to Grand Central. That apparently is not the case. It is, because that would have been really confusing to try to figure out which terminal your Empire service train is coming into in New York. But apparently it's just the New York-Albany trains, not the ones that go to Montreal, Toronto, or Buffalo, that will be impacted. Those will continue to go into Penn, but the New York-Albany ones will use Grand Central during this period. So that's a little more predictable service plan. Unfortunately, if you're an Empire Service rider who your destination was south of New York, it will require a cross New York City transfer. And I don't know that Amtrak's providing that. We haven't heard
So
that yet.
are they going to provide any kind of shuttle service or
That's what
something?
we're waiting to hear that.
Because-
Initial, their proposal is to do just six trains. so
6 trains.
it's
Yeah,
That's
just-
but-
that's just the New York-Albany
it's just-
service.
Yeah,
Those-
it's just the New York-Albany service.
Those 6 trains have a lot of people on them.
They do.
So
They do,
whether it's
yeah.
for 1 train or 6 trains or whatever, there should be some kind of a shuttle provided.
Haven't heard, when we have Amtrak come to PCAC, they're coming?
The PCAC.
We should learn more.
Yeah, by then, we hope that everything, the president of Amtrak has apparently said that the service plans have to be done by June 1st. That just,
Oh, they have to.
yeah, he says if they've got to have them done by June 1st, so.
Well, we should,
We hope that, that's a week before our meeting, so we hope that we'll have a full service plan available to discuss at that
well,
point.
we should let them know that Grand Central is already, the terminal as well as the station, as well as the subways, is already overcrowded, and there is work being done there also. And unless they come up with some kind of a plan, just to dump people in Grand Central
Well,
is unacceptable.
That isn't the point, to dump people in Grand Central. The
But
point
that's
is to
the way
free
it's
up
gonna be.
tracks in Penn Station to allow better Long Island Railroad, New
But the
Jersey
result
trains.
of freeing up the tracks is dumping people, I'm very careful with the words I use,
Yeah.
dumping people in Grand Central, right?
Well, I believe they should probably get them over to Penn Station if they have a ticket that reads south of New York. Although, arguably, if you don't have a lot of luggage, it's a lot faster on the shuttle, and then the 1, 2, 3, one stop, then taking a vehicle across town, but.
And they should arrange for more shuttle trains. I'm just saying that everything
Well,
is
why don't we talk to Amtrak
overcrowded.
when they come?
Everything is overcrowded, so they have to
So let me move
provide
on.
some.
There was a large discussion at yesterday's board meeting about the capital plan amendment. Some board members were not happy about some of the elements of it. Some were not happy the short time we had to review it and then vote on it, those that have a vote. There was quite a discussion from folks that frequently don't speak up. So that was sort of refreshing yesterday, and I know that Ronnie heard that discussion and is going to act accordingly about giving board members materials in a timely fashion. There was also a large discussion, which you will see if you haven't already in the press, about the MTA assuming more debt, raising the amount of the capital program, raising the amount of debt that we have to deal with if that puts pressure on fares and service. It doesn't immediately. The every other year fare hikes and toll hikes are still, part of the plan. But if interest rates were to vary widely, or if the state did not come through with promised monies in a timely fashion, thus causing the MTA to bond even further, that could put pressure on fares and service. And if you look at the plan for every other year fare and toll hikes and carry them to their logical conclusion, at some point fares are going to be unaffordable for a lot of folks. As it is, if you're in zones 4 to 6 on the railroads, their rate of increase, the last 2 fare hikes, was lower than everybody else's because you're already talking about $500 and $600 a month in commutation, which is untenable for a lot of people. That's a real incentive to drive. So we don't want that to happen. So all of this being said, I was very unhappy to read in the paper this morning that the Move New York plan is going nowhere. It doesn't appear that the governor is ready to sign onto it. It would be an additional shot in the arm for monies, and we do need additional operating subsidies because everybody's talking capital, nobody's talking operating, and that's, again, real pressure on fares and service. There was another discussion, and principally this was brought up by board member Andrew Saul about procurements. There was a procurement that really was taking the MTA for granted. It was an existing contractor. They were given an extra 2 years at a really ridiculous rate of increase. Board member Saul objected to it, and then Ronnie Hakam suggested that it be 1 year, and the rate of increase was really lessened from what it was originally going to be, and the board is even pushing for it to be shorter than 1 year. The board is really balking at sole source procurements, and I think that message has been heard, and I think, board member Larry Schwartz said he thought there could be billions in savings if the procurements were done more smartly. Got to put an adverb on that. So I think you're going to see some changes in the procurements, and I'm hopeful that we will, because there are some sole source things that really bother some of the board. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but whenever we do new cars, it's always the same people. Whenever we do station renovations, it's always the same people. And they're starting to take the MTA for granted, and that is not good. And they think we have nowhere else to go, and I hope that isn't so. You heard Bill mention the announcement that the governor made. The first one was about taking over Penn Station. He would like the state of New York to take over Penn Station. That is not likely to happen. Penn Station is Amtrak's jewel. It is, you know, it has probably more riders and more, well, of course, everybody knows it has more users in a day than all 3 New York City airports combined, which is pretty staggering. Amtrak is not about to relinquish that, because that would make it really tough for them to continue their mission. And I hope they do continue their mission, because we need a nationwide rail service. But I think that this talk about the work that's happening this summer, I could swear that I heard it was going to be next summer as well. I don't think it's going to be done in one summer, and I don't think anybody wants it to go on into the fall when things are really busy and everything. So I'm assuming that unless a miracle happens, that it will be more than one summer's worth of this work. So we really need to get a good plan for the Long Island Railroad and New Jersey Transit. And our subway riders, because a lot of people might shift to subways. They might drive to Queens, for instance, and shift to subways, which would really impact lines that are already overcrowded. Then the governor made a big thing about the subway system. He offered this, you know, $1 million grant for ideas. We are already getting the R211s faster than we expected them to come. I don't know who the builder is yet. That procurement hasn't happened yet, but the delivery schedule has been moved up. That replaces the R46s, which is all of the A train cars, a few Fs and some Rs, but mostly it's the entire, although there's now some 32s on the A train, believe it or not. I thought the J and the C were the only people to get that, but there's a few on the A. So that's moved up. The R179s, which are going to, you know, replace the R32s and the R42s, has been moved up from Bombardier's disastrous delay, so that's good. So the governor is taking a really active role in the subways, and how I hope he takes an active financial role too, because it's one thing to say, you know, I want to do this, but money is so important here. We are spending a fraction of what other countries in the world spend on their infrastructure. New York is not the capital. I hope that's not the reason we're not getting federal support. But I don't even think Washington, D.C. gets the federal support they should get either for their transit system. So, Ellen.
I thought one point in this $1 million, what's the challenge called?
$1 million.
The $1 million challenge.
Genius Award. Yeah,
The Genius Award.
Yeah.
Was that he made such a strong point about it will take 50 years to get CBTC. My microphone's on. I'll speak closer. I'm sorry. But taking 50 years to get the entire system on board with CBTC is just plain too long. And so getting some minds, you know, working with the MTA and getting some others to think about how new ways of doing the signaling system that can speed it up, whether it's working with CBTC, get at why it takes so long and solve some of those. But that finally the message is we're totally over capacity. CBTC is one of the best ways to assist in that, and 50 years. And the governor was really clear that 50 years isn't going to work. So I thought that was.
But in that same vein, and Queens Boulevard riders are going to experience it.
Yeah.
Next year,
It's
installation of CBTC
extremely
is not
painful.
painless at all. The Queens Boulevard line benefits because it is a 4-track line, and you can run 3 tracks in the predominant direction of travel and the reverse for everybody else. When you don't have a 4-track line, when you have a 2 or 3-track line like many of our lines are, that is not possible, and there's a lot of pain to have CBTC
But
installed.
I think in
I'm
some
not
of
even
this
sure
is-
it's the latest technology
Is there a
anymore
way?
either.
Yes. Is there a way to speed it up so that the pain is not so
That's
great?
the question.
It's-
That's Trudy.
Okay, a couple of things. First of all, in terms of how this is going to be paid for, this is no secret since it's out in the news and every place else and every blog, that there is an ongoing conversation, discussion, whatever you want to call it, between the governor and the mayor about who has responsibility for the New York City subways, for all of transit in New York City. And the fact is that Bill de Blasio keeps on saying, I'm the mayor, but not my job, and we're not going to give any more money. And the governor has finally said, if you don't want to give any more money and you don't want to do anything, then I'm going to take it over, and we will find a way to get money. I mean, that's the basic what it was said. As far as CBCT, what the governor said is that if it takes 50 years, that he doesn't expect to be around in 50 years, and he'd like to be around for
He
this.
doesn't expect to be around 40 years.
Or 40 years. And as I and other who are slightly older than him pointed out to him, we would like it to be around while we're still alive. So that's part of this whole genius idea that somebody somehow, or some group or whatever, should be able to come up with something that does what CBCT does. But- See,
CBTC.
I always get it wrong. Say it again.
CBTC.
CBTC does, but in a much shorter period of time. And he has said that they will find the money, but basically, Bill de Blasio, stay out of this. If you don't want to do anything, if you don't want to put in money, then
Well,
I'm going to take over.
I don't think it was lost on anybody that two of the mayor's three appointments to the board voted no on the capital program, and Commissioner Trottenberg abstained.
The record for anybody here who didn't know that, yeah.
The last thing I would say, I'll keep this short, is that yesterday was Dr. H's last day on the job. There are quite a few accomplishments that he was able to claim. 2nd Avenue, 7 extension, number of station improvements. Cortlandt Street continues to be delayed, unfortunately. Judlow is dragging their heels on that a little bit. Judlow was just given the L train tunnel job, and we're told they better not drag their you-know-whats anymore. I had a discussion with Ronnie and with Larry Schwartz, and so we hope that they will get up and running, and Cortlandt Street will soon join the list of, will become the 473rd station in the system, basically. But Jano Lieber will be replacing Dr. H. Will not have the same title. It's a whole different combination of jobs that Mr. Lieber will have. He comes from Silverstein Properties. It's Chief Development Officer, I believe, is the name, is the job that he will have. So it remains to be seen who will do a lot of the capital construction things, but he will certainly oversee that department. Trudy.
Whoop, can you hear me now? Could we send a thank you letter or something, a note from all of us thanking Dr. H for all the work that he did, and especially for his cooperation with us? I mean, I'd be happy to say what should go in there, but he always kept us informed. He came and spoke to us. So if we could put something in writing to him, for him, I don't know if you need a motion to do that.
Yeah.
If so, I'll make a
I don't
motion.
think anybody's opposed. Who could be opposed?
Well, no, but sometimes just for the record, you need a motion. Okay, while I have the mic, I just want to say something about what you said before about the M79. I was not informed about that, and it's a block away from my house, and it's the line that I have been fighting for so long, the SBS. And I let Andrew know about it, but he was at the board meeting. But somebody called me and said, how come I wasn't there? This was being run by DOT. I have now asked DOT. They had 3 different people there, including a position that even Andrew didn't know existed, the director of SBS services. But they had 3 or maybe 4 people there. And I asked that from now on, whenever DOT is having any kind of an event, and not just in Manhattan, but in the 5 boroughs, that we would like to know about it. We would like to be informed before the fact.
If it relates to public transportation.
If anything that relates to public transportation within the city of New York, we should be at least informed about it before the fact. And I specifically asked anything that's going on in Manhattan that they notify me and Andrew. And Andrew, wearing his many hats, didn't know about this. And they said, oh.
All that information couldn't penetrate the hats.
Exactly. Anyway, so hopefully, Bill, if you will keep track of this, or maybe write a follow-up to
Trudy, let's
the
go
people.
to, because I think old business is your issue. So we're ready for the M15 discussion, which continues apace.
Okay. Well, I have invited the 2 people, and maybe Liz
Giving
and
these out.
Gail, you want to come up, and at the end, maybe we can put, or over there where there are microphones, so that, okay. As you will all recall, we had a meeting with MTA Bus. It is now almost 3 months ago. And one of the main issues that I brought up was this situation with not having an SBS stop and not enough local service along 2nd Avenue at 72nd Street. We followed that up here with a letter dated March 30th, I think it was. Let me just pull this out. At any rate, and in the meantime, I had spoken, yes, March 30th, and we sent it to Darrell Irick as acting president of New York City Transit, and sent it to all of the other, the bus people, Stephanie Bogart and Mike and David and all of them. They're Bogard, excuse me, and everyone else. It is now, it is now 2 months since we wrote our letter. At the last board meeting, I distributed, and that was the thank you note that I referred to in the minutes, the thank you note from Valerie Mason, who was supposed to be here with Liz and Gail, but could not, because of a work obligation, could not be here. So they'll be speaking for her also. At that meeting, we were also told by Deborah Hallmore that they were reviewing it. What they had to review, I don't know, but that we would have it within a week or so. It is now 2 months since we wrote a letter. Subsequent to that, and I'm going to let Liz talk about her most recent experience with Stephanie Bogard and Dave, whatever his last name is, from Bus, and with Rob Marino, because this is almost getting hard to believe, though we are all used to the various runarounds that we get from New York City Transit on various issues, but this one really takes the cake. So it is now, and Deborah, you're here? And they said, and Ellen will tell you, and Liz will tell you what they said. Actually, maybe you want to read the letter from Stephanie Bogart and explain how it got to be written also. You know, your letter to her and whatever. But I will now turn it over to them because these people have been working so hard. I think I told you that at the community board meeting, Council Member Kalos, and I should say Ben Kalos has been amazing with this issue also, asked for the statistics from the Transit Authority, from Maurice Book, from Rob Marino, from other people who were there, and they said that they would get them to him, but the statistics really just showed what they have been saying, that there's no need for an SBS stop or for more service. At which point I reported to the East 72nd Street Neighborhood Association that it might be a good idea for them to do their own survey that may show reality. Gail is now running that survey for them with all of the other members of this. So I'm now going to turn it over to the two of them, and if you will let Liz and then Gail tell you what they're doing, and then maybe we can decide what our next step is, because it's nutsy.
Well, thank you for inviting us to meet with you today. We really appreciate it, and certainly we see you as big advocates for the rider out there, and we're looking forward to finding ways to coordinate. I think it's fair to say that the East 72nd Street general neighborhood is an incredibly enthusiastic bus community. I don't think you'll find more people charged up about the chance to ride the bus than our residents. So a whole bunch of us stand ready to take direction from you to try to collaborate in whatever way we can to increase the frequency of bus service on the Upper East Side on the M15 lines. I had the pleasure of a brief public speaking session on Monday where I came to the New York City Transit MTA bus committee to ask for their help for an operations problem we were experiencing. There's a construction site at our 72nd Street location and 2nd Avenue, and there wasn't signage. People were confused where they're supposed to go to catch the bus. And I had the good fortune to be sitting next to Stephanie Bogard, and after the meeting, she offered to come to our site to get the signage right, and I'm pleased to report those changes were made. So people are standing in the right temporary spot, nobody's wandering around aimlessly, and the bus drivers know to stop there, so that's great. Backing up to the help that Sure.
How long a period of time was it that the wrong signage was there?
It was pretty quickly discovered. It started on May 17th, and so we had the roughly 5 days before I was able to come to the committee meeting. So it was a pretty quick fix, thank goodness.
But I should add that this made it difficult for them to do their survey because there was no bus stop, and the people didn't know where the bus stop was. And I believe you had started your survey
That
before
very day, yeah.
that day. So this was just another complication. And I think you pointed that out to Stephanie, didn't you?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So going back to our longstanding request to try to increase the frequency of bus service in our neighborhood, we, as you know by background, we had a petition last summer, and got about 3,000 residents to sign it asking that a 72nd Street stop be added to the M15 SBS service. We followed that up with the Community Board 8, and got both the Transportation Committee's support and then the total board support for 2 resolutions. One asking that we have an increase in the local bus frequency, and that we also explore adding the 72nd Street stop to the SBS route. We had elected officials at all levels, Carolyn Maloney down through the city council, write a letter of support, and in the end, unfortunately, our request was turned down. Not long after, we were able to meet with people in our neighborhood, plus Trudy, who brought to our attention your organization and suggested that we be in a position to maybe collaborate with you and get some further support. So we have, at Trudy's suggestion, we undertook a bus survey, a very brief one, just that when we came to this meeting, we could give you some preliminary analysis and perhaps get some feedback and next steps from you. The survey was intended to have our volunteers standing at the 72nd Street station for the local bus, I should add, and that it was at 3 times of the day. The morning rush hour, we picked 7:30 to 8:30. The noon time period was noon to 1, and then the evening was 5 to 6.
Liz, you're talking about the 72nd Street stop on the bus, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
not the station. Okay. Yeah, exactly. There's no station at First Avenue, so that's why I'm,
Yes, sorry. So we stationed a volunteer at the 72nd Street stop at both the First Avenue and the Second Avenue locations, those 3 times of the day. And our charter was to note when the local bus arrived, what the bus number was, and how many people got on. The second thing we were doing is tracking how many SBSs were going by and getting their bus number. So obviously, just 1 hour period, 3 times a day for a total of 7 days. So my colleague Gail has been working tirelessly to enter all the data into the 6 spreadsheets, the 3 time slots in each avenue, so that we can share this data with you. And we just finished the last survey last evening. But a few things do jump out from the preliminary data. The first, and I think the most important, is that the time that the M15 local arrives is very erratic. On paper, you'll see generally there are 6 buses per hour. And to me, it sounds great if they came every 10 minutes and people knew to expect that. People, I think, would be extremely pleased. The problem is it doesn't come every 10 minutes. So just one small example would be First Avenue, Thursday, May 18th, in that morning time slot, 7:30 to 8:30. The first bus took 19 minutes to arrive, then 6 minutes, then 14, then 4, and then 12. And the pattern isn't the same. It changes the next day, 16 minutes, 9 minutes, 13, 3, and 12. In the 2 extremes of the morning and the evening rush hour, the ratio was between 2.5 and 3 times as many SBSs. In the noon time slot, it was a little closer to 1.5. So not as many SBSs seem to be running. So the irony, as we stood there watching people waiting for the bus and not knowing when the next one was going to come, is that there's nothing, even at the brand new bus shelters for the local bus, there's no indicator of when the next bus might be coming. While if you were at an SBS stop, there's information galore. It's practically like being in Times Square. There's so many flashing and scrolling buses that are coming and how many stops away, etc. So it seems odd to me that you have such a frequency of SBS bus on each route and all that information about when the next one's coming, likely when you're not too worried about it. When you're at the local stop and it's coming 6 times an hour, but you have no idea, I've waited 10 minutes, is it going to come in 2 more minutes or 17 more minutes? People have to basically cut and run. So one of the comments we received about adding bus service was that our area didn't deserve it, that the demand wasn't there. And I think you'll see in Gail's comments that most people lose patience after 10 minutes and have to make a decision. How do I get to where I'm going? So I'm going to stop there, and Gail will give you some examples of what we observed and why higher numbers aren't on our formal sheet as to who boarded the bus, but they were waiting.
First, I'd like to add, when we asked for volunteers to do this survey, we got 25 responses, which is really, I think, a testament to the interest in us having either more bus service and a select BS stop on 72nd Street. On Friday, the 19th, for example, between 1st and 1 and 2 p.m. on 2nd Avenue, 17 people got on the local bus within that hour, 12 to 1. During that same time period, 20 people left the stop. They just got tired of waiting. They either walked or took other means. They got into a cab, called an Uber. But that's 20 people that left the stop. That's 20 lost passengers.
or some of them walked to the nearest SBS stop, which is possible.
That's possible.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make here is that 20 people left, you magnify that throughout the course of 24 hours over 7 days a week, that's a lot of lost ridership. I met some woman who had just come from Cornell. She was going home, I was on 72nd and 1st. She was going home to her house, which is in the Carnegie section of the city. And she's standing there, and she was, I guess, was new to the neighborhood, and she kept on watching the SBS buses go by. And she said, "Doesn't the bus stop here?" I said, "The local stops here, not the limited bus, the express bus." And after waiting about 15 minutes for a local, she gave up and she said, "I'm claustrophobic and I don't like the subway, but I have to get home, I'm going to go underground." One morning I met a woman doctor, from Haiti, an internist going to her office at 120th Street. And she had said that she would take a cab, but all too often she has to wait. And if she took a cab every time she had to wait, it would be magnified. This is a kind of a side issue. One day on 2nd Avenue between 5 and 6, 18 buses went by 72nd Street and 2nd Avenue between 5 and 6 that had not in service signs. That's 1 hour, 18 buses not in service. I chatted with a mother one morning who was at the stop waiting for the school bus. Her kids go to school in the 80s, and she was concerned watching with the lack of bus service on 72nd and 1st, what was going to happen next year when her son, who now gets bus service, is of an age where he has to take public transportation. And how would she manage getting him to school on time, given her experiences with the bus and being at that corner? She also felt there should be an SBS stop on the corner. I must tell you, as an aside, when we were doing the petitions for the SBS stop on 72nd Street, and I think I did probably the bulk of the petition signing, when people found out what I was petitioning for, they stopped me to ask if they could sign and put their name up. That's how much interest there is in having an SBS stop on 72nd Street. I think the point here is that people lose patience after a while. They have to get somewhere, so they start taking out their iPhone, looking to see when the next bus is coming, and if they don't like what they see, they walk away. And the other thing is, again, there's tremendous interest in having an SBS stop on 2nd Avenue to help improve the timeliness of the service.
So let me just ask whoever of the three of you can answer this question. When you had Congresswoman Maloney, council member,
It was every elected official on the east side.
when they write to, I guess you're writing to Darrell Irick about this?
No, let me explain
writing
that this
to?
started when my God, my mind just blanked out.
Ronnie.
Ronnie was still it was
Of
written to
transit,
her.
okay.
Darrell was CC'd. I distributed this letter at two months ago when we wrote our letter, and there was no response. The community board made a resolution, not just sent a letter. There was no response. Finally, in January, this is October to January, I guess we're a little ahead of the game right now, they finally responded, and the response was basically, and at the community board meeting before that, Morris Book, who is the liaison to Community Board 8, said, basically, Ben Kalos got up and said, "You can at least send us your numbers. You say you have your surveys." And he said, "Well, we'll get them to you, but our numbers show that you don't need," basically what Gail was saying, that people just find another way to go. Finally, there was a response that basically I distributed it to you. I can distribute it again. I brought copies again today that basically said, forget about it. You're not going to get an SBS. That's when they came to me, or they had come to me before, but that's when I met with them. And subsequent to that, I'm not going to repeat everything that I've said here twice, but there is still no response to our letter. Now, Liz was being much nicer. I am not going to read you the whole thing, but after she met Stephanie Bogert and talked to her both about the temporary stop, but also about the SBS service, and also wrote her a most a lovely, lovely note, very polite, thanking her and everything, and asking and saying that she was going to be here today, that we were involved. Stephanie Bogert wrote back to her, and I was CC'd on all of these because she had CC'd me, and basically said,
Oh, that was the thing too.
I forward your email to Robert Marino.
Right.
He will gladly meet with you. Now, they weren't asking to meet with them because they already said, we're on top of it. They have met. They have written the community board. Robert Marino's in government affairs to discuss road operations issues. Okay? Because of the late notice, Burrows and I cannot make tomorrow's meeting. That's David Burrows. That was then followed up this morning from a letter from Rob Marino, and this goes full circle. And I'm not going to say what I call it, but those of you who know, there is something called a circle blank, and that's what we've all been going through. And it said, and his note to Liz said, Deborah Hall Moore from Government and Community Relations will be attending the Transit Riders Council meeting tomorrow for Government Community Relations. As we discussed at the committee meeting on Monday, you can reach out to Morris Book for our office for other issues related to New York City Transit. And that was their response. Nothing about answering our letter, nothing else. And very frankly, I am at a point, and Deborah, you're here. Maybe you can tell us and these ladies and everybody else what has happened to a letter now, which is now 2 months waiting, that we're waiting for a response.
And then we've got to sum this part of it up. So, Deborah, do you have anything?
Let me apologize for my misprojection.
Can I get you a microphone?
Yeah, she has a mic there.
Okay.
Hi, for my misprojection last month, because the correspondence was indeed in the queue, but it hasn't come out on the other end yet. But it's going to come out soon. I don't know that you will trust me at this point, but it's going to come out soon. Well, I'm just saying, I did misproject last month, you know.
Deborah, why is it taking over 2 months to answer
Trudy, we
some
have-
very simple questions?
Trudy, we have a correspondence backlog, and quite honestly, we have a correspondence backlog, and we have a rigorous vetting process, and much of our correspondence is delayed at this point. You know, we're getting a new system, and we're trying to work out those problems, but that is reality right now.
Do you know if the issue of the ratio of locals versus SBS is addressed in the upcoming letter? Or is it just a response to whether 72nd can be made an SBS stop?
I believe it's just a response to the 72nd Street and the request for that to be a stop.
Well, several folks and some electeds have wondered why the ratio is so bad between locals and SBS, though. You heard this?
No, I heard that.
Yeah.
That's an operations planning issue. That's not even a DOB issue, Andrew, as you know. You know, operations planning just...
Wait a minute, Trudy.
Deborah, you were CC'd on Rob Marino's letter where he referred to you, on Stephanie Bogart's. It seems like everybody is passing the buck or whatever to somebody else. And in the meantime, these people are waiting on corners, are not getting to their doctor's appointments, to their senior centers, to their kids' schools, or anything else. And this is absolutely getting ludicrous. And now, according to Rob Marino, and I think you were CC'd on that on his note, I think you were CC'd on I know, because I have it right here, and I will send it to you if you...
I had no need to do that. I have
Okay, fine. And it comes back to you, and it goes back to Stephanie Bogart, to Rob, to Morris Buck, and we're just going round in one big circle.
It sounds like a letter is coming soon. That is for sure. Ellen?
Why, and this is on behalf of all the elected officials and the community board who have really had it. And who do they come to complain to? Me. And I tell them that I agree with them. Why it took so long to answer the community boards, the congresswoman, the council members, the assembly, state senate, everybody, their letter to Ronnie. And this is really ridiculous.
Go ahead, Ellen. And then we really do have to move.
Just to clarify, because recently I've been on First and Second Avenue and experiencing the extreme clog that happens at 59th Street. And so I'm wondering if DOT, and understanding you have an evenness problem is one of the things going on, and so that the headways don't seem
as meaningful because you have these 19 minutes or whatever. And do you know the travel speeds that are happening? And is it as much a DOT issue and talking to them?
Don't say it, Trudy. Let her finish.
But if they've been brought into the discussion to understand that's a part of what's going on is evenness.
And
I brought
that's-
this
that's
up with the DOT people yesterday at the 79th Street when I got there, and, and they say that the scheduling is theirs. I will also point out to you, maybe a clog at 59th Street, but Second Avenue is a downtown street, and, so there's no clog at 59th Street.
Right,
No.
but there's a round trip.
Ellen, whatever it is, the fact of the matter, and this is the issue, is the non-responsiveness of, and then telling them that they don't care what the numbers are, they know the numbers.
Yeah, no, there's also a street, transit puts, the bus division puts dispatchers out at various points on the route to keep the service even, and that is not working, obviously. They're actually not even fixing incorrect destination signs on buses, which I call in about 10 times a week to poor Stephanie, who's so sick of me. But so the street dispatching is an issue here. If you heard that, what Liz said about when the locals are coming and that weird schedule, that's not just a traffic issue too. The dispatchers could do something about that, I think.
Well, not only that, but I think you also heard Gail about the issue that we keep on bringing up. Next bus, please, not in service. Gail, how many did you say there were in
Oh, I didn't hear any next
your
bus, please.
study?
I heard not in service.
Well, next bus, please, or not in service is basically the same thing. It ain't going to stop.
No. Next bus, please, has people on it. Out of service does not.
Oh, well, I have had a lot. Sometimes they interchange the signs, I can, okay. What was that number, Stephen,
No,
Gail?
it was 18 buses within 1 hour had not in-service signs on Second Avenue between 5 and 6 p.m. On Wednesday, the 17th.
I don't know, but we'll have to do more. We do have to move on. We really thank you so much for this. This is great ammunition for us to further find out why we can't get either a stop or more locals. I mean, there's something, one of these two things we have to get.
And
Thank
I
you for your
think we
support.
should go on record as thanking these ladies and their organization for all the work they are doing as public-spirited
Yes, thank you
citizens.
so much.
And riders, so thank you.
All right, what do we have? Nomination,
Yeah, the one thing you probably have to do is this, the other.
Is what?
The bill.
Oh.
Executive committee, but the other thing.
you want to explain this?
Yeah.
It's a little arcane.
Yeah, it's a little arcane, but we fully expect Andrew to be elected PCAC chair at the
Who knows?
June PCAC meeting. Since he's the only nominee, we expect he's going to be elected. There could be, and you might find somebody that will be able to make those to get you out of it. But in any case, then Andrew would hold both the PCAC chair and the chair of the TRC. There's slots for both of those positions on the PCAC executive committee, and Andrew can't be both of them. So in the bylaws, we have a provision that councils can approve basically a representative for their chair if he's serving in another capacity, on the executive committee. Bill Guild, as the vice chair, as various vice chairs of the PCAC over the years, has been on probably at least 16 years, I'd say, and knows the ropes. And I know Andrew has spoken to Bill and suggested that he'd like him to stay on the executive committee as the TRC's chair's representative, and Bill has apparently agreed, at least as far as Andrew's told me. So that requires, the bylaws say that the council has to appoint the person. So if someone would like to make a motion to effectuate
I'd like to make
that.
the motion for Bill Gill to be the assistant for Andrew, to represent the TRC.
Well, I wouldn't call it that necessarily.
Well, whatever you wanna call it, I
The
just make a motion, let's just move
chair's
on.
representative on the
Because he's on
Because
the
you can't
executive
hold two seats
I
on the
know that,
executive
and
committee.
since
so,
he's executive
yeah.
member here, it should be that way, easy as pie.
All right, is there a second? All right. Anybody opposed? Seeing none? That's great. That means there's continuity there, and that's great. Bill has a wealth of knowledge. What else do we have to do?
And I just will mention, I will mention that at the June meeting of the TRC, we'll have our annual officer election. If anyone is interested in either nominating someone or running themselves, please let us know by the PCAC meeting, which is June 8th. So if there is a contested election, we can have a
You
ballot.
called it a PCA meeting.
No, I said PCAC.
Oh.
I am not Rich Cottagio.
Remember that? He always used to
I am
say
not Rich
PCA.
Yes, I am
Yeah.
not Rich Cottagio. But anyway, if you could, I'd appreciate it if you could get it to us by the PCAC meeting, which is on the 8th. And so if there is a contested election, we would have a ballot. If not, we'll just come in and do it by acclamation, basically. Thanks.
Okay, everybody knows the work that, we all did a field trip to look at the Bushwick Viaduct. We saw the decrepit condition near Myrtle and Broadway. We also went up to see the Atlantic Railway cut. What the heck is the name of that railway? All of a sudden I'm a blank on it.
New York and Atlantic.
New York and Atlantic, that's what it
uses
is.
the
Yeah.
railway, but
New York and
believe
Atlantic.
belongs to LIRR.
Right, between Metropolitan Avenue and Fresh Pond Road, and the bridge is not high enough, the tracks are too high, they need to be lowered. All of this work has begun, but it's going to really begin in earnest, so we're fortunate to have Dan, and let me hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Zajakowski? Wow. Just like it's
Yeah. Just like it's spelled.
Zajakowski,
As what the poets
who will
used
give
to
us
say.
an in-depth briefing of the work that's going to happen on the M line as of, obviously, an important prelude to the L train shutdown. So, Dan?
Thanks, Andrew. And I just want to thank everyone, the New York City Transit Riders Council, for having me, and to all the guests as well. Thank you. So my name is Dan Zajakowski, and I'm in the Operations Planning Division at New York City Transit, and I work on rail service planning projects. So I'm just, sure. No problem. Okay. So yeah, I'm just here to speak to you today about the upcoming Myrtle Viaduct project and how that's going to affect subway and bus service. So as you may know, the M line serves the neighborhoods on the Myrtle Avenue line, Bushwick, Ridgewood, and Middle Village, and Glendale, Queens. This line segment has a ridership of about 60,000 riders per weekday. That's a massive growth over 2000, and some of you might recall, in 2010, we rerouted the M train from its previous alignment where it ran down here to the financial district, and now it goes up 6th Avenue. So that's been a big driver in the growth of the ridership of the line. Obviously, the neighborhoods are changing as well, changing trip patterns and so forth. So that's all contributing to a lot of growth. Key connection between the M and the L at Myrtle Wyckoff Avenues. So we expect that's a very important transfer point for affected riders here. And as Andrew sort of mentioned in the preface, so this work is sort of related to Canarsie, although it really should be happening as well. The conditions of the viaduct and the bridge were you'll see the pictures, and I know a lot of you have been out there, so it just needed to be replaced. But this is also part of the reason why this is so critical right now, and why we're doing this ahead of the Canarsie project, is that the M line is going to be one of the most critical alternative services during the Canarsie closure. So we certainly could not afford to have any disruption in M service while the L line is being fixed up. And so just the geography here using our track diagram, which is not geographically accurate, but the two sites where the work is going to be going on, that Fresh Pond Bridge, that's the New York and Atlantic Railway Bridge, and that's between Fresh Pond Road and Metropolitan Avenue. and then the Myrtle Viaduct. Previously, some called it the Bushwick Cut. That is the connection between the Myrtle Avenue line and the Broadway Jamaica line, which runs, it's not on the street grid, it kind of cuts through basically within a few feet of some residences.
We saw them.
So yeah, they see the train every day. So,
And they've all been relocated, I believe.
I can't speak to that, but I know that was
We were told that everybody has agreed to be relocated, and at least that impediment is gone.
okay. That's important, obviously. So, so these two projects are being sort of piggybacked off of one another, doing both at once in order to lessen the effect on riders. I want to mention that Fresh Pond Bridge, the top part, that's going to be a 2-month project, and the Myrtle Viaduct is really a 10-month project. So it's a 10-month project all in all, but you'll see that there's 2 phases because that Fresh Pond Bridge that'll be fixed in over the summer. So the Myrtle Viaduct, the cut here, as you can see, going basically in people's backyards. It's a 2-track line built in 1913, and it's basically the structure is being removed and rebuilt, and with it the tracks above. And again, some of you have seen these conditions in person, but it's really it's not in very good shape. It looks, this needs to get done as soon as possible. So you can this is corrosion and rusting. For the long term, this needs to be addressed. Otherwise, the structure can't continue to carry the service that it does.
I think some of these support beams are on private property, which transit did not have access to. So I think they're going to claim this property.
Okay. Yeah, I know it's an extremely constricted work environment for the construction. So again, this is concrete, and the interior steel. A lot of it, this just all needs to be replaced. So, I mean, I'm more of an expert on subway service, but to my untrained eye, I'm like, okay, this definitely needs to happen. So,
What about the graffiti? Can you
Yeah.
comment on the graffiti?
I can't offer any comments on that. And here's a rendering of what it's going to look like when it's new. They're just rebuilding the foundations, the columns, and the deck structure and tracks above with low vibration track installed, as well as walkways for transit personnel and others who need to walk along the side of the tracks. Moving on to the other, moving north, this is the Fresh Pond Bridge, the New York and Atlantic Railway Bridge. This bridge is also in rough shape. It's been hit by trains over the years, and I'll show more pictures of the similar kind of cracked concrete and things. But this is the right of way on the left here. It's the bridge to the left. Just northeast of that yard. And this is between Fresh Pond Road station and the Metropolitan Avenue stations here. Again, the walkways can't even be walked on right now. And underneath, again, more sad-looking, old, rusting infrastructure. I don't know.
They're sinking the track
My
bed.
understanding is the track's going down
They
instead
are.
of the bridge going up.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you guys seem to be more. Again, I know more about the service planning issues, so yeah, this is just making the point here. We need to do this. So this project's basically happening in 2 phases. We're beginning it over the summer. That's when ridership's the lowest. And again, our goal is always to minimize impact to riders when we're doing work and doing service diversions. So starting July 1st, there's going to be no service between Myrtle Avenue Broadway and Metropolitan Avenue. we're going to be operating 3 free shuttle buses. 2 of them are going to run basically the same alignment for most of the routes. Riders will be generally indifferent unless they happen to be going to Fresh Pond Road or Metropolitan Avenue. And I want to mention too that Fresh Pond Road, the station's only really about 2 blocks from Forest Avenue Station. So it's depending what bus comes. Some people may be more tolerable of walking those 2 blocks, but every station is going to be served. And then there's a 3rd route, and this is really just it's kind of a shortcut for those Middle Village passengers, and it's just the quickest way. The road network, Metropolitan Avenue and Flushing Avenue are pretty big, wide roadways that hopefully we can get people over to the Broadway line as quickly as possible. And that's instead of going through Ridgewood on some smaller streets, that looked to be the best alternative to do that. And that's during phase 1. So this is the 2 months over this summer. Then once that the Fresh Pond Road, the railroad bridge is done being worked on, and then keep in mind that the Myrtle Viaduct, that's going to still require another 8 months of work before we can restore service over that. But once that bridge is back between Fresh Pond and Metropolitan Avenue, that's going to allow us to run a rail shuttle, and it's actually going to be, it's sort of an unusual operation because this isn't a typical thing that we would do, but we really wanted to help out the riders in this case. There's going to be 2 shuttles, one on each track, and they're going to operate back and forth between Myrtle Wyckoff and Metropolitan Avenue, 1 on each track. So 2 trains running independently of each other, basically. So kind of like what you see on the Franklin Avenue shuttle with both service on track like that. And yeah, that shuttle as well. Yeah. And these shuttles are going to be 6-car R32 consists. 32. There's a lot of work put into this in advance so we even be providing rail service here. Some work was done in the yard.
Cement that they're second-class citizens,
right? So it's going to be each of these 2 shuttles are going to operate on a 20-minute headway. So combined, it'll be a 10-minute service in each direction. I'm sorry, was there a question? The headway now is in the peak. I think it's like 9 trains an hour in the peak. So that's down to basically 6 trains an hour. But it's going to be a pretty challenging operation actually. So.
Do you know? Have you timed out that 3rd? And the previous slide, the shuttle bus that goes from Flushing Avenue Station nonstop virtually to Metropolitan Avenue, what the running time of that bus line is versus the current M service to Metropolitan, which makes stops?
I have not. No. Oh, I should have mentioned too that shuttle bus, the Route 3, here we go, this one, is it's stopping at Jefferson Street on the L. So it's the only stop on, and it's also, it's not labeled, but there's a dot, Fresh Pond Road and Metropolitan Avenue, that's going to be a stop as well. I can't speak to the running time. Obviously, like the current bus is like a decent indicator, but those are stopping every few blocks along the way. So.
Yes. Sure, I have a question concerning ADA requirements. What I'm looking at here is that the M service becomes unobtainable in this area here for ADA compliance. And additionally, there's some issues there concerning, like I said, the amount of ADA compliance you're bringing up the stations to concerning FTA and federal rules, Troy-Ownal FTA.
Okay. So in this, with this scenario right here, the Myrtle Wyckoff is is an ADA accessible station still, so the buses will be serving that, and that the buses are going to be duplicating what the M does. So for folks who want to travel from Metropolitan Avenue, and then we'll be going to either Flushing Avenue on the JM or Myrtle Wyckoff on the L. Both of those stations are ADA accessible. So I'm not sure if that answered your question.
I'm going to back him up as well, because Edith Prentice has a complaint about this too, on your Phase 2 problem as well.
Yes, yeah.
You have a shuttle bus only going to Myrtle Broadway. Myrtle Broadway is not accessible. Flushing is. You have Hospital right there at the next stop. You have other buses there. The problem is that shuttle bus, people now cannot get on to go to Metropolitan or to Wyckoff.
Uh-huh.
M train is a very, very important piece to it, because people want to go to Myrtle Wyckoff to connect to other buses or go to Metropolitan. As you know, there's a major shopping area over there. The concern is you have this shuttle bus in Phase 2 ending at Myrtle. Not a good spot to turn around. There's so much traffic issues over there too. And you have Woodhull Hospital, which is the next stop, which you get everyone needs to get upstairs on the elevator to get onto the train, but now they can't, because now the B57 bus will be maxed out with every wheelchair, walker, and everything else. If there's a way we can move that bus out of Myrtle to the next stop, it will be a little more easier.
Okay.
And concern of safety.
So
do have
you're
other buses.
Suggesting extending the shuttle route to Flushing Avenue?
Yes. And this
Okay.
was mentioned last time. And I agree with, say your name? Troy. On the Phase 1 piece. Yeah, Andrew, back me up right there, thank you. Right there. Flushing is, you have the buses terminate there. They all can turn around, do the hokey pokey, and you turn yourself around. They can go right back to where they got to go. The concern is the safety concern. If they ever do any construction where the M makes this curve, you're going to have more problems buses turning around over there. It is not a good spot for termination at Myrtle Avenue. You're going to lose. They're going to lose their time, and even the Myrtle Avenue buses are going to affect that as well.
Mm-hmm. So I'll say we've been working a lot with the city DOT.
And you know DOT doesn't.
And traffic congestion is a concern. One of the things we're doing related to this is we're going to be having, or somehow, they're going to be traffic agents in the fields helping to manage the traffic.
You know it's not going to work. I'm being truthful to you. And your Phase 1 project, it's nice to see that you're adding another stop on the L train, but regarding the other bus, now you're going to have additional 3 buses running on Myrtle. You need to remind DOT strongly to really keep Broadway and Myrtle a little more faster traffic, because that is very congested, even with not construction going on.
Mm-hmm.
It is an issue, because if you look on your bus time device on the 46 and the 47, they're delayed. Waiting for a 47 bus, instead of being 15 minutes, it's 25. They get stuck, and it's not the bus's fault. It's DOT's fault.
Noted. Okay, I'll take that back. And I also did note your comments about wanting the shuttle bus to serve Flushing Avenue. I'll mention too that the B46 you can
And the
connect
47.
at Myrtle and Broadway. Take that to Flushing. So, okay. Let's see, where were we? Oh, that's pretty much all I had. One thing I want to point out too, and so the Broadway stations, the JZ is going to run all local between Broadway Junction and Marcy. So those stations on Broadway are really going to get a huge increase in service. Right now, in the peak hour, the Kosciuszko, Gates, Halsey, Chauncey, those are only served by one or the other of the J or the Z. In this case, it's a doubling service basically during rush hour, and those other Flushing, Lorimer, and Hughes, those are also getting an additional 12 trains in the rush hour. So, and that's really because this map too, it sort of distorts things, but to a lot of the people that are affected by this, that are between the L and the M, Their closest station might be an M station, but just because of the street grid, the Broadway or Wyckoff might only be a couple blocks away, so they'll be very good walking alternatives. So we're going to try to emphasize that with our public information, brochures, and so forth. Okay, thanks. And for any other questions, I'm happy to try to answer and answer what I can. Yeah.
One question, what will be the western terminus under both scenarios? Because as you know, this weekend, we're gonna have a huge service change that affects the M that will be extended to 96th Street on the Q line on 2nd Avenue.
Uh-huh.
That will be alternative under both scenarios?
So the M, while this is happening, is just going to operate to Forest Hills, its normal terminal on the other end. And I'm glad you brought this up, actually, because while this is going on, there's not going to be any major geos on the L that are going to interrupt service. Again, the L is the main alternative for a lot of affected M riders. So we've been extending the M up to 96th Street when there's no L between Brooklyn and Manhattan. So likewise, when there's no, I mean, the M is just going to do its normal route when there's no, and the L we won't be doing any work on the L that would cause people to have to take the M. So.
Any other, yes, Troy?
Just real quick, is there any station updating going here, and is there any effort within that station updating or track updating to make it more, once again, more ADA compliant? Because the MTA has notorious ADA issues. Thank you.
I don't think there's any station work going on here, but Deborah's shaking her head no. So yeah, that's his. Yeah, but if that's not the case, I would come back to you and let you know. But I don't know. I don't think there is. Yeah.
So basically, on weekdays, the M would run from Broadway Junction to Continental Avenue?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
On weekends, it'll continue to go to...
Weekends, it'll go to
Delancey,
Essex.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, and then weekends, it'll go between Broadway Junction and Delancey, Essex. Late nights, the M is going to be suspended during phase 1. During phase 2, that shuttle, the Myrtle Line shuttle, that's going to operate overnight as well. So.
And you anticipate all work being completed by April of 2018? Yes?
I'm not an engineer, but yes. I think, is a pretty high-profile project, especially related to Canarsie. So I think there's a lot of pressure to
The L train work
get it done in a
begins
timely manner.
in 2019. Do you know the date of that? Deborah, do you remember that? The commencement of the L service work, April of 2019. Okay. So there'll be a period when both services will be okay. Anybody else? Yes, Jason.
Instead of having the weekend duplicate service, that's a total nightmare. Why don't we use the alternative that we have been using these past 2 weekends? That instead of having the M terminating at Delancey, Essex, why not run it to 96th Street and 2nd Avenue on the Q line? It's more effective, and people will have more direct weekend access into Midtown Manhattan.
So, I'll just say as a general service design issue, that's not really something we see the sufficient demand for right now. We're constantly looking at ridership on the M that as it currently exists between Metropolitan and Delancey, Essex. If at some time demand warranted it, we would revisit that.
You could also, depending on whether you're done with the Cranberry Tube work, because when the A and the C are forced to run through the Rutgers Tube, You lose the Fulton Street connectivity. You could also run the M further than Delancey, so you could run it down to Broad Street, thus giving people that connectivity. That's just
This is
another.
during
Yeah.
just a normal.
Unless you anticipate the Cranberry Tube work being completed by the time you do this. And I don't know if that's the case.
Huh.
But that gives
that's
you
a-
another Fulton Street connection, which you don't have when they do that. Yeah.
Since you're bringing up about the M train, since everybody's been talking about the reroutes of the M, the one thing I'll say this, they never, you saying the M is going to 96 and Second, it's not saying that. It's still saying 57th Street, and it's throwing off a lot of the customers.
Is that our 160 code?
Yes. And this is the one thing you and I discussed, and I did, as I told you, I did go on the
So
line.
on the days that the M is actually going to 96th Street, which is hard to believe
And
that
the
it
sign
is.
says last stop, and everyone
57th
doesn't
Street.
realize the M is really going 96 and Second, but when it's coming back,
How many
going,
weekends is it scheduled to go to 96, do you know?
this weekend is
I know.
doing it for a 3-day weekend.
Well, I'll
This is
just-
we ran that in operation once so far, and then it is running again this weekend.
And I can tell you this, it does help the F train lead some of the pressure of the F.
I will tell Winton that make sure the signs read.
Or put up some paper signs up.
I'll take that back as well about the
That's
electronic
new equipment,
signs on
you
the
don't need
cars.
No, because if they can't do it now, put a paper sign just saying M to 96 and Second.
Those trains, those 160s are completely programmable. They can put any destination on them they want.
Well, you want me to take a picture for you?
I
Or a
believe
video?
you. So I'm going to call Winton after this meeting.
Can I join you?
What, in the telephone?
Yeah, it's just right now. It's just been. Sorry, there was a question about when the M was running to 96. So far, we've just done it since Second Avenue was opened on weekends when there was no L between Brooklyn and Manhattan. So we did that was about 3 weeks ago, and then we're doing it again this coming weekend. Yeah, not until not as long as the L is running. Yeah.
Is there sufficient signage about this? Because now I understand why I got some calls from people saying, what are these strange trains along Second Avenue? And nobody knew what they were except they were, and I said, no, it's not strange, it's the Q. I mean, I wasn't there at the time.
Yeah.
And they said, no, it's a different alphabet. And I said, what alphabet? And they said, I can't remember, but I know it's not Q.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
So is there going to be signage somewhere about this?
As I
was
recall, I think there were.
GOs.
There's no columns in the new stations. I thought we had some kind of posters.
No, but there are places to put posters, and there are unused newspaper stands, which, that's another issue.
Mm-hmm.
There are places to post something. I would suggest, just for my own sanity, so I don't get more calls about strange trains.
Sure.
is what they
You
call
think-
it.
I'll double check that.
Trudy,
I think we
You think
should.
those are strange? This summer, you're going to have trains that say Maryland Department of Transportation running on the Long Island Railroad.
Long Island Railroad is not on the east side of Manhattan.
That's very parochial of you. Did you go to parochial school? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys,
This is
yeah.
very interesting.
Bring up one issue which Bill had brought up before, if we're through with this, under old business.
I think we're old.
The-
Aren't we under new now?
Yeah, I know, but under old business, I had said I wanted to see a copy of the draft letter about the vendors, the Street Vendors Act, and I looked at it, and it is perfect, and I would ask that it be distributed to everybody else, and if there are no objections, that this go out,
Well, we're distributing it.
right away, because it sums up everything
Great.
that we said at the last, see, I can say something positive once in a
Yeah,
while.
from a deli owner, that's a rave. Remember that ad?
Yeah.
Any new business, folks?
So,
Christopher,
Yeah, a new business.
I was very formal. Did you notice that?
Huh?
Very formal.
Thank you. In new business, and I know Deb is right behind us also, but I just want to say, I'm glad to see there are signs in Main Street Flushing regarding reconstruction of the sidewalks, because some bus stops have to be moved. But if it's possible, can they just recheck those signs, because some of them are getting torn down?
Deborah, you didn't hear that, right?
No, I didn't, I'm sorry.
Deb, in Main Street Flushing, you have temporary signs where the bus stops are located. Some people are trying to take them down. You might have to ask them, whoever's putting them up, because it looks like they're MTA signs, because they definitely look like yellow.
People do go around tearing down signs, I've noticed.
My phone wasn't working that day.
Now, where is this? Is Flushing?
Yeah, downtown Main Flushing, anywhere from Roosevelt, starting from Roosevelt Avenue up to the library. They put a temporary sign saying, if you're looking for this bus, please go to that stop where you can get it. It was related to the Q7, it's all the buses that supposed to pick up customers. They relocate them to the library stop.
And you're saying there are signs?
Yes. I'm not complaining, you can see them, they're good, but I just don't like people tearing them down.
Oh, you mean that happens all over the city?
Yeah, it really does.
But a lot of people ask me if you guys can please put it back up, because they like them.
Just monitor and make sure that they stay up, whoever's.
Yeah.
you have
It's not a
dispatcher in
bad
the
sign,
area.
I'm just saying, people can see it. Yes, they like to see it.
Ken, you push the microphone button. Do you want to say something?
Did you say Ken?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I have ancient, I have ancient business, musicians in the subways.
Oh, that's ancient.
Remember that?
I sure do. I was
Yeah.
blasted away by one just the other day.
What?
I was very much involved with a group of musicians just the other day.
Yeah, 1995, PCAC sent in to transit authority some suggested standards. 2 years ago, I offered some revisions of that, and a couple of years ago, PCAC requested a meeting with the transit police, and I don't know of anything that's happened. Now, to me, the basic problem is that people don't understand where it's a problem and how it's a problem. It's a problem in specific places, it's not a problem in some other specific places, and, in my opinion, the musicians are generally very high-quality musicians, and they are probably very popular. So I think that gets in the way of enforcement of where they should and where they shouldn't perform.
I agree, and there are some locations, such as the shuttle area at Times Square, where they are not on a platform per se, and they don't obscure announcements, but on many platforms, you would not be able to hear an announcement, the music is so loud. And we have complained about this to Chief Fox and other members of Transit District 1 and 3, and it continues. I think they're looking at other issues in the subway and not so much the performers, unfortunately. And maybe in this day and age, maybe that's what they ought to be looking at with things that are going on in the world. But you are so right. You do not get to hear announcements on some platforms because of the volume of the music.
There even is a place, 59th Street and Columbus Circle, downtown A, where an A train actually came in and left without me even knowing, because the A trains are very quiet.
Yeah.
The doors open quietly, there's no external speakers or anything.
And those are among the oldest trains, too. And you say they're quiet. They were built well, those R46s. Thank you, Ken. We will revisit it with the police.
Thank you, Andrew.
Could we get back to I don't know if you need any kind of.
Someone had their hand up.
Oh, no, I wanted to finish up, now that it was distributed, about the draft letter, to just say that unless anybody has any objections, I would ask that it be sent.
Do we know that
right
people
away.
have actually read the letter?
Well, it was just distributed to them, so if,
It's fine.
Does anyone have any problems with this letter going out? Then it's okay. It's going to go out.
thank you.
Jason?
Andrew, I had an issue a couple of weekends ago when I took the M15 Senate bus from 14th Street and 2nd Avenue to Christie and Houston. I asked the bus driver if he was going to stop at Christie and Houston. When he literally got to the corner of 2nd Avenue and Houston, he said because of construction, the next stop will be Allen and Houston. So apparently, they moved the SBS stop from Christie and Houston to Allen and Houston.
Houston.
Yeah, Houston. And there's no signage about this.
This a temporary thing now?
No.
Because of construction?
We don't know, Andrew. The only bus stop that I see in that area is the M15 local, not the SBS. So therefore,
Of course
now,
they do. I mean, unless it's really temporary. I mean,
so
like,
now, if you want to board a SBS bus, you have to go to Allen and Houston.
Which is the equivalent of First Avenue in Houston. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. We'll look into that, Jason.
Thanks, Andrew.
Sure.
Andrew, after Trudy's done.
I mean,
Matt,
we're
Matt
sending
had
out the
his hand
letter.
up. Let me take Matt's question, please.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah.
The M15 bus on 74th Street does not run as often as it should. And I was waiting for this bus once for at least 10 minutes.
Matt, it's
Yes.
you came late today. We had a whole thing about the infrequency of the M15 locals versus the SBS.
Heard the whole thing, Andrew. I was
Oh,
here,
okay.
heard the whole thing.
I didn't think
And could we find out when the construction is going to stop on the M101, 2, and 3 on 3rd Avenue and 14th Street? It's been going on now for a while, and I have to board the bus across the street.
Matt, that construction has nothing to do with us. That, they are replacing all kinds of pipes all the way up the east side, and my neighborhood has been totally disrupted uptown, and it has nothing to do with us. It is replacing all of the gas lines and the something else lines and the sewage lines, and they're tearing up all the streets. So, okay? So we have no idea, and every time I ask, they say, when we're finished.
And everybody, I assume, has heard of DOT's plans to extend the sidewalk into 7th Avenue between 42nd Street and 34th Street, thus removing one lane of traffic on 7th Avenue. Everybody heard that in last night's news? Yes. We'll see what that has to do with bus service. That's going to be very interesting. Chris?
You know, the one thing we did forget to mention, an update with the homeless level, because it's been getting kind of worse, not on just on the F line, but definitely now I'm starting to see some of them. Yeah, but I'm also going to add the Q. As Sharon's correct.
And in stations, let us not forget, there was a woman camped out at the downtown side of Rector Street with about 30 bags around her.
Yeah,
It
and
has
it's
been there
kinda-
for ages.
and Andrew,
I
it-
report this. This is like, you know how many MTA people go? And
But-
police could use that station?
But Andrew, there's also another issue that's been brought up too. They had, you okay, Ellie? Okay, it's okay. The main concern is they had to discharge a train. I don't remember what day it was, but they had to discharge the train because this homeless person had bed bugs. Hey, I didn't say the other thing. I'm talking about bed bugs. I'm being truthful. Trying to be kosher on this one. The concern is
The conductor discharged the train?
the superintendent told him to discharge the train, for the record, because it was not safe and no
What
one.
about off the record?
Huh?
Just-
Don't confuse me. The bottom line is the concern is they take over this whole seats on the trains, as Sharon is correct also. Not just on the N, the R, and the Q, and sometimes once on the W, but definitely, it's actually, how about the J? The J as well, and the Zs. The bottom line is they're all coming out of Queens from Jamaica, but at the same time, now they're starting to take over the Q train. Andrew, this is very worse, because in Brooklyn, there was a discussion with two elected officials, Mark Traeger and Chaim Deutsch, and the borough president is very upset about this.
Well,
And-
they definitely are predominant on the E and the R because those are the lines that never come out of the ground, so they're warmer in the winter months,
Try again.
obviously.
Now they're upgrading. And now let's also bring it up also. The dancing kids are back on the bridge, on the Q, and the ends. And let me also tell you, once I'm lucky I didn't get hit, but I looked at him like you
Talking
hit
about
it.
it's showtime?
Yes. You know what I mean. I said the kids are back.
Wait till the open gangway cars come. They can move between cars easily.
Yeah,
They'll be.
yeah, but the thing is
Yeah.
but now they're dancing on the B train now. And let me tell you something. I'm lucky they didn't break the poles yet in the B's yet, because, you know, they're...
E,
yes,
the R, and the C are the three lines that never come out of the ground.
I'm not worried about that, because the bottom line is Andrew, they're also doing number ones in the elevator still at West 4th Street and 34th Street. Come on, you know, it'd be nice to go
West
into an
4th Street
elevator
had a
to smell
different
something.
problem yesterday. I'm
'Cause-
sure you've heard.
I plead the fifth on that.
Somebody jumped in front of a train.
Yes.
Yes,
And they did
11:30
reroute the C
a.m.
trains, some Cs over the D and B line to ease some pressure down. But the bottom line was this is getting to be,
Well, in addition to having Winton to one of our meetings on many rapid transit issues, I think we ought to have the police back on a number of issues if we can.
yes, and also let's also deal with, I'm glad to see
There's
that.
noise issues, there's homeless issues, there's a whole host of police issues we should have.
Yes, and I can tell you this, we had that incident at Avenue U, and let me tell you something also, Andrew, not just Transit 34 is hunting this person down, but 3 other precincts are hunting them down, and the elected official has made this very clear. They have done, making this clear to the community that they are looking for this guy. They have hold some trains in like extra 1 minute.
Which perp are we talking about
This
now?
this perp on Avenue U that happened on the first day I started doing the surveys with Bradley.
Avenue U on the Q line?
Yeah, it's on Avenue U,
Okay.
on the Brighton line.
Yeah.
The bottom line is there are cops now. I'm glad to see there are cops, and I'm glad Transit 34 is taking it really seriously. But it would be nice to see the other precincts in other transit areas taking it serious well, because you don't know if, say, these kids like to jump onto the tracks, or these dancing, or the homeless. After a while, it's getting kind of, this is getting worse every month.
It's not
And
like we don't have enough causes of delay, we have to have that too, right?
yes, and they're causing delay because they're taking the whole world with them. But the bottom line is, it's getting more disgusting. This going
Between broken rail, sick passenger,
broken elevators too,
doors being held, police actions,
and it's even I'm glad to see that our buses are running. But the problem is also we still have an issue with those too, because
we have brought up the time, the length of a normal trip has really grown.
Yes.
Which is why we are pushing for excess trip time as one of the parameters that transit examines. Terminal to terminal on-time performance is they need it as a tool, but you need interim and you need excess trip time added to these things so that people have an idea what's causing the problem and where it is. Most people don't ride from 205th Street to Coney Island. They ride an interim portion of the route, and we really need interim markers.
We also have to start asking, because when you're in a station and you have to let more people on than you ever had before, is the runtime different now?
Of course
After,
because the dwell time is different.
Exactly. So at what point, when it's not coming in on time for forever, at what point do you have to admit, in fact,
There's a service cut.
there's a service
A de facto
cut?
service
Yes, yeah. That's,
or delay on the service because you don't know if, say, one line goes out, they all go to the next line, and that causes a chain reaction. It's like a virus, but, it's nothing you can, there's sometimes.
I also, in the capital program, there's a lot of stations that are due to be upgraded, and one that is notably missing from the stations is East New York.
Please don't bring that up.
It is in such terrible condition, and they're actually going to upgrade stations
Bill's-
that are in much better condition.
Yeah, they're actually, what our information is that next week, the Brooklyn Borough President is going to have an event out at out at East New York, calling for
We should be involved.
the same standards to be applied to that station as other LIRR
There's
stations.
a huge city development that's happening around that station.
Yeah.
Freedom Ticket may start. People are certainly going to be diverted to the Brooklyn branch when the Long Island Railroad when the Penn Station work is happening. And East New York looks like what hole.
Well, yeah, one of the things they're
stinky
looking
hole.
at is a difference between East New York and Hempstead, where you have people trying to redevelop both areas, and Hempstead has a lot of good facilities out there. East New York, you don't really want to go in that station if you can avoid it.
It's like a forgotten place.
It's,
But-
it doesn't have a lot of ridership.
No, but it actually
and-
does.
Well,
In the AM
lot is
It stands to have
It
a
has
lot.
over
That's
1,000 passengers a day, but because of what's
East New York,
termed
Long
as
Island
the
Railroad.
peak direction, there are far more people that get off in the peak hour than get on. And so the numbers look low, but when you add them all together of midday, end of day, it's actually over 1,000 passengers. So
But Ellie, there's also one other issue that a lot of people get nervous about, the lighting in the station, because let me tell you something, when Matt Kesserin was the Long Island Railroad, and I put this complaint in many years already.
Right.
I'm sorry to say this, but that station, yeah, the lighting needs to be fixed, but also the whole thing needs to be power washed down thoroughly,
No,
just like
it's
7th Avenue on the
beyond
B and
power
Q.
wash.
And
It's way
past-
beyond
it's
power
way past
wash.
power
It's
wash.
way past power wash. But
I'm
what would
just
also be
saying it
nice
nicely.
if they do a renovation there, would be an enclosed walkway to the L train there.
But here's,
That would be wonderful.
in the
There is the
report,
Atlantic Avenue station on the
it
L
is
right there.
considered in a state of good repair. It looks like a bombed-out, shelter from World War II, and it's considered in a state of good repair.
Right, because in a state of good repair doesn't have anything to do with perversely doesn't have anything to do with the condition of the station.
No.
It has to do with when the station was last
Platform may not have
rehabbed.
ruts in it.
Standards, and that, it's
Anyway,
standard
we're,
too low.
we're coming to the end of our time. If there is nothing else, I'd like to thank everybody for coming today and for your involvement in our meeting, and we will see you at PCAC. When is that? June what?
The 8th of June, so
The
we
8th
have,
of June.
we have two weeks from today.